Hey guys, Professor Leverins here. I just wanted to touch base with you today now that we're midweek through week 2 and just say hello, talk about a couple of issues or tips for some of the things that we've got coming up this week, reflect on what we talked about last week, and of course wish you a happy Veterans Day today. Especially if you are an active service member or veteran, thank you for your service, definitely. A couple of interesting tidbits about this holiday. This holiday starts off in 1919 as Armistice Day. Actually, 1918 officially as Armistice Day, the day that World War I officially ended. World War I, known once as the war to end all wars, because the people who fought it really thought that they could just slug it out one last time really good and then be done for war forever. Or, launch another global war in 20 years. But anyway, so this war, it ends on the 11th day of the 11th month at the 11th hour. A very odd and precise time to end a war. They all got together and they said, okay, all hostilities, at least on the Western Front, are going to cease at 11 a.m. on the 11th of November. Very precise. And in fact, one of the last service members killed in action in World War I was killed at 10:59 and I believe something like 45 seconds. He had like 15 seconds to go. I believe it was a French-Canadian soldier, or a Canadian soldier, if I'm correct. I'm shooting from the hip here. But I believe that what had happened was that the all-clear signal ran down the Allied side faster than it ran down the German side. So this poor guy got the call that the war was over and that there was a ceasefire. He popped his head up out of a trench and a German sniper put a bullet in it. And then about 10 seconds later, got a call like, oh, hey, war's over. Oops. But interestingly enough, this was a war that ended very precisely, but happened as the result of a total accident. And that's, to me, one of the most fascinating things about World War I. You probably know, or you may know, it starts because the Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand is assassinated in the city of Sarajevo. And he's killed by this assassin, Gavrilo Princip. And it's got to be the most accidental war that's ever been started, because, okay, so Princip was part of a gang of people who wanted to kill the Archduke anyway, because they were rebels and they were trying to get the Austrians out of Bosnia and Serbia and the Balkans and all these areas. So the Archduke's in town, and Princip and his gang, they say they're going to kill him. So they try to assassinate the entourage, the caravan of the Archduke's cars, but they mess it up. And the Archduke escapes. One soldier in a car riding behind him is injured. So the Archduke stops by the hospital, visits the guy, and then keeps on with his tour of the city, right? So meanwhile, all these conspirators, these would-be murderers, they're like, oh man, dang it, let's just go home. So Gavrilo Princip, he makes his way home. He stops into a sandwich shop to get a sandwich. Right about this time, the chauffeur driving the limousine for the Archduke, a man who we think was named Leopold Liotka, he makes a right turn instead of a left turn, because he's not really familiar with what's going on in their new route. They're deviating from their old route because of the attack, and the Archduke wants to see these people in the hospital. So instead of making a right turn onto Franz Joseph Street, instead of making a left turn onto Franz Joseph Street, he makes a right turn onto Franz Joseph Street. He quickly realizes his mistake, and he starts to back up his car. And he backs it up right outside of a sandwich shop, where little Mr. Gavrilo Princip, a young skinny guy who was known among his group as a nervous dude and a terrible shot, comes wandering out of this sandwich shop, sandwich in hand, and sees the very people that he had been trying to assassinate earlier in the day. So he walks up, fires 2 shots, is immediately subdued by a crowd. Within an hour or so, the Archduke and his wife are both dead, and within a month, all of the great European powers of the world are at war, in the biggest conflagration the world has ever seen. So it starts because of one dude's wrong turn, and it ends very precisely at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. So anyway, little World War II lesson. All right, moving on. I loved reading you guys' neologisms, the words that you made up following the English morphological rules. Most of you did like really great on that. The only real problems were when somebody came up with a word that actually already existed. But that should show you at least that you're kind of on the right track because you've managed to use morphology to create a word, even if it did exist. So your morphology was correct. So nicely done there. Phonology. Now, I know this week is a really intense week in terms of what we cover. The International Phonetic Alphabet is challenging, to say the least, when you first look at it, when you're first trying to figure out what's going on here. But if you practice it and if you keep working with it, you'll begin to see that you can read it almost second nature as you begin to learn to read and write it. And it really helps you break down. You can transliterate any language into this International Phonetic Alphabet, and it will at least help you with pronunciation of that language. It's also really good for identifying ways that we morphologically pronounce just different words within regions of English. So a critical skill for any budding linguist to acquire. So really make sure that you don't slack in this area, that you don't cut yourself short in these concepts, and please get a hold of me if I can elucidate them at all for you. I'm more than happy to. Okay, this week we're looking at prosody, the sound of language, and that's what discussion 1 is all about. Essentially, what are those sound features of our language that aren't necessarily encoded into the way that we write it orthographically, but that send messages when we employ them. For my hand gesture, in a sense, is almost it's not necessarily linguistically prosodic, but it's definitely body language. I'm emphasizing, arching my eyebrows, and it changes in voice pattern, things like that. There are all elements of prosody. And so that's what you'll be doing for discussion 1. Now, discussion 2 asks you to look more at the International Phonetic Alphabet and then describe its importance and what it's used for and how it can be useful in understanding other languages. Hint, they're kind of telling you in the prompt, hey, it is important, so obviously you want to address why. Your assignment is to begin building your annotated bibliography for our final paper. Now, things to look out for here: make sure that you've got 6 sources besides our course text, or in addition to. Make sure that you're following that APA formatting, title page, all your entries in APA formatting. Touch base with me if I can help with any of this. Don't forget your annotation for each entry, and then also remember too that you have to have a separate references page attached with this document, included in it. That's just the references but no annotations. So you repeat some of this stuff. If I were you, I would build just the references page first, and then copy it, and then begin building the annotations. And so you'll save yourself having to rewrite the annotations if you do it that way. So just a tip. Watch out for that APA style, as I mentioned. I'm happy to help with any of those things. And I guess that's about it. Please don't hesitate to give me a call at my office number if I can help with anything, or email me. I'm going to keep saying this every time I reach out to you guys and every time I talk via video. Get in touch with me. Let me know how I can help. Okay, well, that's all for now. Have a great Veterans Day and have a wonderful weekend. See you guys.